Tired of the hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power. Hello and welcome to Your Ultimate Life. This is one of the special Thursday episodes that we started a few months ago in anticipation of the book, Coaching and the Rise of AI, and the impact that AI may or may not have on the coaching industry specifically. As with the other Thursday episodes, I've got a couple of experienced people who have a lot of experience and their own set of opinions and actions with regard to this new technology, and we're going to just talk about it today. So, E, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kellan. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you. Ankush, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kellan, and wishing you a very happy birthday.
Well, I appreciate that. So that'll be fun. So I don't have a particular set of questions. I just want to get the conversation started. So, E, you happen to be on the left side, and I read left to right, so we'll start with you. AI, are you using it? If you are, how are you using it? What are you doing with this new technology, if anything, and why or why not?
100%. Just some context. I was a tech entrepreneur and then transitioned from building one of the fastest growing startup in New York City to coaching executives, social entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs as a coach to have their effort and 10x their positive impact in the world. And now I am building a platform where we're combining some of the most powerful life experiences in one platform called Reset and Rise. And the short answer is absolutely, I'm using AI as an experienced techie. I'm always interested in some of the latest trends, and I found that it's been an incredible tool to shorten time and in short, I've been using it to help make some of the tedious things to get started for a human to kind of leverage and save time. Specifically, like, for example, drafting some legal documents or crafting, making some reflections on my own. And I've definitely used AI as a coach of a mirror reflection of some sort in the past as well, on top of kind of using the generative AI for kind of output and business and legal related items.
When you use it for reflection, what's your experience with that?
I've had different experiences of different GPT built by different people, kind of designed for reflection, for purposes by different teachers. And I found that they're built quite differently. And there's a typical experience I've experienced with ChatGPT being just like whatever I say is a very people pleaser kind of a reflection, right? Not rub the ego the wrong way. And in the past, I've also experienced there's versions of GPT when the version 3.0 come out, it's actually very direct and it doesn't try to people please. I've had AI reflect, it's like, what are my shadows? It's actually quite confronting. But the newer versions don't quite do that anymore. And I've also had experiences of specifically build GPT to build with specific teachers teaching in mind. And I've also had friends who are trying to build really confronting AI coaching. I've had some deeply transformative experience. I've had experiences where I was crying because I was shown parts of me that I wasn't paying attention to. I wasn't quite experienced on my own. And that was surprising. And it was actually very healing and at the same time quite attuned.
That's fascinating. We'll dig into it more in a minute. Chris, I want to give you a chance. So are you using it? What are you using? You mentioned something in the green room about building something. So tell us about what you're doing with this technology right now.
Yeah. So I would say 12 months ago, and perhaps even 11 months ago, I was doing absolutely nothing with it. I have done a complete 180 on AI, and maybe that's not 100% true, but I've had quite a drastic shift this year. So a year ago, anyone talking about AI and AI coaching, I kind of just ignored it, poo-pooed it, didn't really think much of it. And then in January this year, I met someone who was, really into it, who was introduced to me by my coach at the time, Steve Hardison. And so we got talking. I started using ChatGPT in a big way. I'd kind of played around with it a little tiny bit, and I found it very, very helpful. Um, but we're still, I don't know, not really seeing it as a coach, but I kind of got into using it quite a lot. And I'm not saying I'm any kind of super user, but amongst friends, etc., I seem to have been using it a lot more than anyone else that I know in my immediate circle for a variety of different uses, including once or twice getting it, for kind of advice or coaching, you might call it. And I've had various results. I can completely agree with you that ChatGPT can be very, very agreeable, um, but also the opposite. So I think there was some prompt that someone put out, which was like, "Give me the no BS response and what you see, etc., etc." And it's been interesting because as I started using it, I actually introduced a number of my clients to it who typically are kind of leadership coaches. And I was using it to help them get more out of our coaching and say, look, you can use this to prepare for sessions, or you can use this to help refine your goals and make plans. But I've also used it with a client once to using that kind of no BS prompt. And we walked through it of how actually it misses the mark in terms of where I would point him. Now, kind of fast forward a little bit, a few months ago, I started having a conversation with a company called Awaken, who is which is kind of an AI coaching platform, but more tailored towards the higher end at JP Morgan, who has been on your show, I believe.
Yeah, I think he was the second or third episode of this back in September, October.
Yeah, so kind of I've partnered with them, and we're currently beta testing my AI clone. It's been out for just over a week or so now, which is quite interesting. So it's kind of good that we recorded this now. I've had a little bit more of that experience. And so again, that's something that probably even 6 months ago I wasn't really drawn towards. Um, and I'm still kind of figuring it out kind of day by day. But what I've seen so far in these early days is it's very useful. I think kind of tailoring it to the way that Awaken are doing it, where it's very specific, not only to be a coach, but actually to also model on specific coaches like JP, myself, and other people. Um, and we're refining it, but it's not me, and it's incredibly useful. So where I'm seeing it right now is definitely a support tool to the work that I do. And I can't remember who I spoke to. Maybe it was Townsend some months ago who was saying, he was seeing that AI can be a really powerful support to our practices, and I'm certainly moving in that direction and certainly seeing that. What degree that will look like, no one really knows, and how it's unfolding, but it's certainly a very interesting time.
So cool. Um, if you think about, and it's for either one of you, I don't care, but what do you see? And you've mentioned some of this in your answer, and we don't know how it's going to evolve. But what I noticed, I was struck. I help people write books. So I started two cohorts of people writing their own stories and creating products and stuff from their own life experience and what they have experienced and become, kind of like we do with coaching and coaches. But I started that in February and started writing. I promised the group I'd write a book with them. And that started in February. And about a month into it, I had this sort of download or experience that I needed to do a different book, and that's this Coaching and the Rise of AI. So I ended up doing both of them, but I did this one first. And in the research part and writing and, seeing where the state of the coaching industry right now and talking about as deeply as it was able, here's what I noticed. I noticed that every 3 months, like twice in the 6 or 7 months that it took for me to research and write it, it doubled in its capacity. And that's a subjective assessment, but in its accuracy, its speed, its relevance, its reasoning, its ability. Did it doubled and then doubled again? And I in part of the conversation with it, I asked, well, given the speed of development, what and what do you think is going to happen with this? So I guess the question for either one of you is, what passes for coaching today? And like, I'm still seeing ads on Facebook: be a life coach, live on the beach, or work on the beach, do whatever you want from wherever you want. And most of what passes for that, and most of the schools or methods that I've been associated with, either directly because I've taken the classes or stuff that I've read or worked with material, is irrelevant and will be more irrelevant as fast as you can breathe. So what do you think this tool development, given whatever experience you've had with it, what do you think it portends for the coaching industry?
Personally, as a personal experience and just watching technology evolve over the years, as someone who works in technology, I believe it's gonna grow, keep the exponential growth is something that our human mind is hard to grasp. And so I think there will be a lot of ways that will surprise a lot of us, how fast it's going to grow and its capacity. And I believe generally, as a lot of these technology evolve, it's going to grow faster than we're comfortable. And a lot of coaches are comfortable. And so it's a possibility that our mindset will evolve slower than how fast AI will evolve. And I see the possibility of this whole industry completely changing, and a lot of coaches will lose their livelihood and lose their job because, as my personal experience, I've already tested. I've had experiences with AI that are better than the average coaches I've encountered so far, especially the ones that you mentioned, Kellan, that are trained in traditional coaching school. It's already happening. And then the AI that was almost free and better and available anytime. And so it's already better than the average coach. Just a matter of time when that was kind of everyone catches on, and a lot of the coaches will lose their job. I truly believe that. And on the opposite end, I do believe as AI evolve, there will be a counterbalance of us wanting more human experience, of not talking in connection with each other, and more community, more connection, and more live experience based. So as everything, when technology evolve, the average will sink to the bottom because technology gets better. But there are certain top of the top human interaction experience that will be so precious, like having like dinner with good friends, like that will take a while for AI to replace that kind of experience with friends. And so I do believe when it comes to coaching, there are a lot of experiences like that, that AI will take a while to experience, and actual humans on top of the receiving top-notch AI guidance will really crave those kind of special, we're together, we're a tribe, we're connected experience. So it will go to extremes with most coaches lose their jobs, and some of the best ones creating some really precious human experiences will thrive and find ways to support more humans in those connections.
So my thesis in the book is 5%. 95% are going to lose their livelihood. And I define making a living as arbitrarily as $100K US dollars. But I just don't think there's any space in the middle for that. But that's just what my research and opinion is. Ankush, what do you think about that? Your thoughts about what does it portend for our industry? I mean, I know your goal is to change the consciousness of the coaching industry and fix the world, and I love it, and I'm right with you in the university and what I'm doing. So what do you think it portends for what now passes as coaching?
Yeah, I think that I've heard a lot of answers like you've given, and that may be the case. And this year I've gone through like a an emotional roller coaster with AI. Like I've gone from this is the greatest thing ever to holy shit, this is the end of the world. And at one point I was, sucked into watching YouTube videos from experts about how this is really bad and all sorts of stuff. And um, I think drawing on my own personal growth journey, I kind of caught myself going, I'm operating a lot from fear here, which is never the best direction to come in. And I think there's a lot of coaches like that, and I'm mindful of people listening to this that I don't want this to be kind of like a fear-based thing that like, oh, we're all going to lose our job. So I kind of stepped back from that and I started talking to real people, right? And people who are outside of our bubble of coaching, or certainly my traditional network. And people who are out in the world, not coaches using AI, and what were their opinions, and how are they using it, and what does that look like? And it settled me down a lot. So, my sister-in-law works for a business consultancy, and I asked her, "Hey, what do you think about it?" And she said, she doesn't see, and doesn't mean she's right. It's just a data point, right? She's like, I don't see any change in the next decade. And how they're using it right now is, she goes, it's allowing us to do stuff that we couldn't do before, and trawl through vast amounts of data and whatever. But it still needs the same human element to kind of present that to the client and do whatever. But it's kind of increasing the capability. My brother-in-law just did an MBA where his thesis was on AI and AI in leadership. So I was like, what are you thinking about it? Right? And he was going, well, actually for us, what we looked about in AI is how as leaders do we manage a hybrid workforce? Because we're going to have some, agents, and we're still going to have some people. So how does that work? But I was like, are you worried about your job going? Are you worried about being replaced? And he goes, again, not for the next decade, right? And he was right there in the kind of cutting edge of it. My other brother-in-law, I speak to him, and he's in a very senior role in a big energy company, and basically his job is out deploying AI into their workforce. And he goes, hey Kush, this is the thing that I'm seeing. It's actually really expensive right now. So they're deploying it into, basically when a customer emails them, the AI does the interaction, gets all the data, gets all the information, and then gives it to the real person at the other end of the phone to deal with the customer. And he said, in theory, we can actually get rid of a lot of our workforce and have AI do this. And he goes, in reality, that's not what's happening. Certainly not right now, and this may change, but he goes, right now what's happening is it's actually increasing the level of service we're able to give to our customers, because the AI is getting all the right data. So when we've got someone on the end of the phone who's really busy, they've actually got everything they need to give a much better solution to the client. And again, so I've got another client of mine who's chief AI officer for a startup. Again, people are quite knowledgeable working in the field. And I realized none of these people were kind of worried or scared. And and then I spoke to someone about, like, coaches, this idea, coaches losing their livelihood. And someone challenged me on it. And they said, well, how many coaches are making over 100,000 right now anyway? Right? And I was like, that's a fair point. So if you look at the ICF data, it's only 1% of coaches who make over $100,000 a year. And that's ICF trained coaches. I would estimate, and see, people might say it goes the other way, but I would think if you actually included non-ICF coaches, I think all of the averages come down. I think actually it doesn't go the other way. So it's way less than 1% anyway. It's a very small number of coaches anyway who are operating at that level. And I think it's a good thing. My family member, I don't know how we were related, but I guess he was technically my dad's cousin, I think, or my dad's uncle, I can't remember. But he was a very, very successful businessman, very successful, passed away far too early in life. I think he was not even 60, but by the time he died, had built up a business and basically bought a house in the nicest part of where we used to live, right? A huge, huge property. And I'd heard some stories about him. He was a very successful businessman, and he used to say, "There's nothing like a good recession," because he said it clears out all this stuff. And I think when if we look at how the coaching profession has grown over the years, even before I was in it, there was a time where you could put out an ebook and put up a website, and you could make 100 grand a year. I've spoken to someone who did that, right? And
Right.
and then Google came along, the algorithm changed, and suddenly that didn't work anymore. So we've always been on this path where we've had to up level the service that we give. And I think right now, I think it's just pushing us more and more in that direction. But I'm actually very hopeful. And what I see when I speak to people is there is a space for AI. I'm definitely seeing that's why I've got a clone. I think there's a space where that can support what I do. But right now, and this may change in a year, 2 years, like we say, it's exponential growth. We have no idea what it's going to turn out like. But I'm a lot more hopeful, and I also don't see it ever. And I might be wrong, and maybe we'll get into one of these sci-fi futures, but I don't see it replacing friends in the same way, or a robot spouse, you know. And maybe there'll be some people who do that, but there's something about that humanness which I think is, coaching is the most intimate service you can buy.
It is. So let me give you some other things. I alluded to something before we started, and I said I'd tell you during the show, and here's the right time. When I ask AI, okay, you do all this stuff, and I think you're right. When I said 95% won't be able to make a living, and you're right, not very many people make 100K, but there's a ton in the middle that earn 50 or 40 or 30 or 70, and they're a half job or they work with a spouse. That whole middle is going to be gutted and gone. There won't be anything for them to do at all. And you're either going to be up at the level where you're in high value, high powered kind of stuff, or you're going to be doing something else. That's what I think. And I think that it is because it is now a call, a demand, a requirement to up level. And so here's what I ask. I said, okay, fine. You do all this really good. And I can't describe, we don't have enough time for me to describe what I did in this research, but I poured all kinds of stuff. I had a thread in ChatGPT that I called 1 million words. And I put on my books and transcriptions and all kinds of stuff. And after a while, it corrected me and said, try 4.5 million words. So that's how much stuff it has of mine. So when it talks to me, it is, it's the same kind of thing. And I'm building a clone too, because I think that it has real value, and I think it's going to gut all the other stuff. But anyway, I said, you do all this really good. And I too had an emotional experience. I asked it intentionally a whole series of difficult, probing, searching questions. And if you tell it to quit fluffing you up, it will. And what it started doing instead is, okay, here's the straight, no BS answer, right? And it prefaced everything with that, right? And then finally I said one day, will you quit doing that too? I said, just talk to me. Enough with this crap. So it doesn't do any of it anymore. It just talks to me. So I said, so what do you suck at? What are you terrible at? What are you not going to be able to do? Because you've basically eviscerated all these coaching models. And I'm not saying the 11 I used were all of them, but it was many of the ones you know about, including ICF. And it ranked ICF as extreme high vulnerability to AI and said all the reasons because it's so formulaic. But anyway, it came back and gave me a whole bunch of well-reasoned answers. And then it said one thing that is the answer. And it said, straight up, after all this crap, it writes effusively, last line, one line, I can't bleed. And I read that and I thought, okay, there we are. So what you're alluding to is the hollowing out, the up-leveling, the technological requirement to get our choices made and our crap together. And I'm going to give you a model, not a model, but a thought. I want you to respond to that or anything else I said. I think there's 3 reasons that coaches have to think about in this choosing. First of all, there's the head in the sand problem. There's lots of people in this context that I talk to. Well, the human element, and I've got that, and nobody can replace me, and that sort of crap, which is true, except you're not really doing that. You're not that. You're talking about it, but it's not happening. So the head in the sand problem. And the second problem is, I want you to picture a casino with a whole bunch of blackjack tables, and all the tables, $10 tables, they're all full of robots. And the only place there is for a person to sit down is in the high roller room. And it says above the door, ante $10,000. I think the ante to be good in this game has just gone up by 1,000-fold.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the right number, but like a lot, not a little. And the third thing is, if you're going to really coach at the level that changes consciousness and creates the kind of intimacy and power that needs to happen, that's work. You have to stay and be all the time on the mountain of growth. Because if you're not going to be in a position to create that kind of space. So, and it's hard. It's work to stay on that. It's intentional. You have to be focused. So I don't think, my experience is that there are some, but most people, because they're not now paying the dues and doing that stuff on that mountain. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm agreeing with you in terms of leveling up. And I still have that concern that it will eviscerate most of the middle and upper, the bottom 2/3, 3/4 is going to be history. So what are you thinking? What happened when I said all that in your head?
I'm with you, Kellan. Ankush, I think that when you're sharing, like, hey, that's not respond or react with fear, that's generally my approach to life as well. And I want to make a distinction, right? Like facing what might be, looking at it objectively, even when it's bad news, is not the same as reacting with fear. Because I'm in looking at the data, looking at the trend, I'm with Kellan here that it's very, very likely. I'm willing to make a pretty high roller bet at this moment that a lot of the coaches will be replaced. It's not because I'm fearful, but rather that's what it is. Like a lot of the manufacturing jobs was replaced, and when automation started and people losing their jobs, that's how sometimes technology works. And by facing what might be realistically and integrating our fear, I believe that's a good place to approach it so that we can, coaches like Kellan, you talked about, like, hey, they can actually face, like, okay, what do I need to do? How can I level up? I do see that's important, is to see, like, okay, people driving Uber right now, there are a lot of cities already having self-driverless cars, and that might be happening to the coaching industry. Okay, what do we need to do? How do we level up? How do we shift our approach? And I love the optimism that it won't happen for a decade. I personally don't believe that kind of timeline. I would, like, in some ways, I think a gentleness may be good for society, but I believe it's a Pandora's box that's already being opened. We cannot control the speed to be like, give us 10 more years to prepare. And so I'm with you, Kellan, that I do believe a lot of them will be wiped out. Just even looking at some surveys from McKinsey that they already found, like 65% of organizations are already using generative AI on a regular basis. That's doubling from the previous year, from 2023 to 2024. And much as I wish I can just talk to a friend and convince me otherwise, as a technologist and a coach and an entrepreneur, my approach is, let's look at reality as it is. And it's also my Zen Buddhist talking, is how can we just be with reality as it is, integrate it, and how can we respond with the present moment, with what we know to the best of our abilities, not from fear, but rather from really having a clear head of, okay, what's supportive? How can we support each other? How can we find the human spirit and together find the best solutions moving forward? It may be scary and sad for people to lose their jobs, to go through changes. How can we make the best out of the situation?
About Trish, I want you to respond to, but in a couple of 3 months ago, there was a big announcement with Microsoft and OpenAI that does ChatGPT, and I don't know if you guys saw the details of that announcement, but they renegotiated their contract, and I was shocked with one thing that I saw in there. One thing was that there was an enormous increase in funding available to OpenAI. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's going to accelerate development faster than it even was. And that was in the middle or near toward the end of writing. And I'm thinking, maybe I need to revise my timelines. Maybe it's Thanksgiving. Maybe it's Halloween. I don't know. But I didn't. The other thing is they had actual targets in that agreement for the achievement of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is like the beginning of the holy crap moment, right? And so they actually have targets for that, and they're not 2050. They're now like 2030, 29, which is 15 minutes from now, essentially. And when you get as old as I am, it's 15 minutes from now. And so I saw that and I thought, yeah, okay. So anyway, I just thought of that as you were saying that. Kush, what are you thinking about that stuff? I saw you making some notes and
Yeah.
exploding stuff ready to come out of you.
No, not. I think we're actually aligned in more ways than not. And when I spoke about fear, I was kind of talking very personally, you know. So I see my own fear, and I do see fear around other people, and I think it's important, and I think there's a responsibility for us to talk more about like what's the bit to do, and not just the headline of everyone's going to lose their jobs, because I think in some ways nothing's changed, right? It's become more pronounced. And I say nothing's changed in terms of being successful as a coach. If you were doing just frameworks and models, I don't know. Maybe there are. Maybe I'm naive. There were people making a living doing that, but I haven't. Certainly in Europe, and maybe it's different in the US. But in Europe, the way the culture has been, a lot of stuff is state funded. So if you're a coach and you're getting paid to coach, you had to have something real to offer that was not just, hey, here's a model that I've gone to school to learn. And so what I've seen is the thing that it took to be successful as a coach. Yes, it's the same thing. And so I wrote something down. You went, you need to stay on the mountain in its work. And it made me smile, Kellan, because that's me. And in fact, for me, it's not work, right? For me, and a lot of coaches that I meet where they see coaching as a calling, it's not work. You know, in my book, I wrote there's a section in there where I said, to me, coaching is a calling. And Steve Chandler challenged me on that, and he said, is that true? Because he's all about coaching being a blue collar job, and he said, keep it in there if it's really how you feel. And I went, it's 100% how I feel. And I've been talking about it as a calling since then. And I've been meeting more and more coaches who are like, we didn't get into this because it was a job or like a good career path. Like it often doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but they've really been drawn to it. So I think the ones that are successful, let's just say the ones that are making over 100, I don't know, maybe I'm again, like maybe I'm naive, but I see they are, a lot of them wanting to keep growing, wanting to change. And I think that, um, like this is one of the things I was interacting with ChatGPT earlier this year, and I was asking it like stuff that you're asking, what's going to happen, and da da da. And then I went, and I just paused, and I went, what's the thing that everyone's missing, right? Because we can talk ourselves into like, oh, things are like this, and I totally understand. Like we need to look at what reality is. And I did a quick little search just now. Like one of the things that I noticed in 2025 was compared to the start of 2025 is certainly with ChatGPT or OpenAI, and I know there's other models, but it's rapidly increased and it's slowed down. And there's even been elements of decline. And I think there's a whole bunch of things that no one really knows. So I'm, by the way, totally open that the fastest timeline that we've got for AGI and whatever is possible. I'm not saying it's not. But what I also know is when you look at anything, one of the things that whether you look at polls for presidential elections, whatever, everything's wrong. There's always stuff that we don't see. There's always we live in such complex systems that we don't, understand. Like right now, when you look on a lot of the forums, people are just moving away from Chat GPT and they're going down Gemini and using other things. I've started using Claude a lot more myself. So there are other things, and like from a personal level, one thing that I found is I've really found it helpful for writing, right? And at one stage, I was like, oh, this is great. I could help. This would help me get more of my stuff out onto paper and get more books out. What I found is it hasn't. What I found is I'm just using my time in a different way. It's making my writing better. I can use it to critique and coach me through my writing, which it has. But right now, it's not seemingly saved me huge amounts of time when I really stop and look at it. And so I think that there is definitely going to be my next door neighbor's lost his job. There's definitely job losses coming. We can't bury our heads in the sand about it. But maybe this is my eternal optimism. I think this is also a massive, massive opportunity. And so one of the things that I've been speaking to leadership coaches about is, given everything we know about human potential, leadership, whatever, and say, like, let's say we know this, whatever it is, right? And no one knows everything, but like we know whatever this is. And then I said, oh, how much of that, all of that, are leaders really embodying and knowing right now? Like, is it 95%? Is it? And whenever you ask them, they're like, yeah, it's probably about 2% or something. Like, we haven't really saturated that at all. There's this huge gap. And so for me, it's like, when we just, and the coaches are interested in that and focusing on that. And there's a lot of people, it's interesting to me when I started talking about raising the consciousness of the planet, how many other people like you and would have kind of similar things. And there's a lot of people interested in that. And I spoke to a coach the other day, and it's like, I think we have an opportunity, because what AI needs right now, and a lot of people have spoken about this, is leadership. Like, the way we use it and the way that we teach it in a way will decide how it goes forward. So I forget the guy's name, but he's known as the godfather of AI or whatever, one of the early guys that started. And that's one of his warnings, right? It's like, we need to teach it how to be as it gets more and more intelligent. Well, I think there's a role for coaches to play in that. And maybe just what I see as coaching is, I don't see models and stuff as coaching personally. And I think anyone to be successful right now, and I think the more away from America you go, the more pronounced that is. So I've got clients of mine. I've got a client who's, a business coach in India. Culturally, it's so far behind the US. To be successful out there, you can't just be teaching models anyway. And it's much more intimate, I feel. And I think so that piece is important. And I do think that actually there's what we also don't know, and we're still trying to figure out, is how this is helping us to enhance our offering. So I know what Townsend said is, wouldn't it be interesting as if you were on a coaching call and we had Zoom, and then the AI was going on the side and it was supporting the coach, right? Because one of the things that I find is I coach very intuitively. And sometimes I say stuff that I've never said before, ever. Like, I'll say things for the very first time. And so in one way, I think I can create an AI coach that's actually a better coach than me, right? As a pure coach. And I think that's the aim, to create something even better than me. But then there's another thing which maybe isn't coaching that AI can support, but there's a difference. And maybe we're all kind of pointing to the same thing, which is, that's the direction that I think this profession is. And I say profession rather than industry. I think that's the direction the profession's going in. And also, I think there'll be huge opportunities, for whatever platform you're creating, Awaken, other things. I think there's going to be a lot of people who will do very well, who, develop something based on this technology that will be helpful for people. I think it's still early days. I don't know what the adoption rate's going to be. It's interesting that JP said to me that people used his AI, which is really good, and then contacted him saying, can we hire you? If you asked me that a few months ago, do you think that would happen? I'd say, no, you got something for 30 or 50 pounds a month, or you got the real guy at, multiples of that. If they use that and it's really good, surely they stick with that. But there seems to be this desire even now. How that evolves, I don't know. But I just think there's a lot of variables out there.
There are. It looked like you were ready to explode with something. Why don't you say what you're thinking?
Oh, I was just more confused of like, I'm just listening to be like, okay, we're headed.
All right. So I had something to say, but I just thought you had a comment you wanted to make.
Yeah.
Really. So I think there's wild opportunity. I'm extremely optimistic, and I'm out of control excited, which is why I'm starting the university. I'm committed as anything to the coaching profession, and that's why in the book, I propose a new model and a method that I had go through the same analysis as all the other ones, and maybe it was being nice, but it told me that the vulnerability was 0. It didn't even rate it high, medium, or low. It said 0. And I asked why, and we dug into it deeply. So I'm excited, and I think what you're saying.
Could you explain that, Kellan? I just wanted to understand what do you mean the vulnerability in terms of replicatability?
No, so I asked with 11, I picked 11 models that I knew, and I wasn't pretending they were all of them. And I ran it through a series of analysis with AI, and I said, so how effective are each of these models at accomplishing the desired outcome, recognizing that people pay for results and they pay with money, they don't pay in feel goods, try to be as hardcore practical as I could. And it gave the best analysis that it could based on available data. And, that's flawed just because everything's not available. And I understand all that. And then it said, okay, here's how good it is at achieving its thing, and here's where the holes are, because it focuses too much on this, and unless you do it this way and all this kind of stuff, it's going to miss these parts. And I'm not going to give all the details right now, not because they're secret, because it would take too long. You want to read it all, it's in the book. So then I said, okay, then given your own rate of development over this last time and what's planned right now, the releases that are coming, how do you think this particular coaching methodology that you can research and understand the best you can from books and things, how vulnerable do you think each methodology is to the advances in AI? In other words, in order to do it instead of having a real coach. And I asked, there's the human element, and I put all of those caveats in there. And so it ranked each of the 11 models, how good they are at achieving the desired result, and how vulnerable they are, and it just used low, medium, high. And then it told me why. It told me all the things and all the caveats that would happen. It did a decent job explaining it and putting maybes in there in the right place. So I had already been working on something that embodies what you were talking about, the reality of the truth of the sacredness of space and of the intimacy of human connection and things that both of you have said. And so I said, okay, good. Now that you've done all these with this one, here's what I'm looking at, and had described it in long detail, just thousands of words. This is what I'm trying to do, etc. I said, so I want you to take it through the same analysis using the same methodologies. How good is it at achieving the results that it's supposed to achieve, and how vulnerable it is to AI? And so that's what I meant. So it took it through the same analysis, and it gave me the thoughts. So
I love that, Kellan. Absolutely. I think we're on the same page and same mission, that I'm building the platform Reset and Rise, where we're combining, I'm recruiting some of the best coaches in the world I can find, running modalities that so far no AI can run. That is some of the most powerful, effective approaches out there that I've experienced. Many of them, one session is more powerful than me doing weeks or months of traditional coaching work, and then combining them, but everything is live with real humans in the community. That's something that we're almost going to another extreme around, like, oh, there are 8 things that AI will do really, really well. But here is some of the top-notch coaches who are at the top of the mountain, top of their game, running some of the best tools out there that AI cannot quite do yet, because it doesn't bleed.
It can't bleed.
It can't bleed.
That says everything, at least to me.
100%. It doesn't quite have a human heart and in connection to be with each other. And so I'm with you that I am really excited about that possibility of AI can really, there may be some growing pains, but AI will help reduce a lot of the redundant, repetitive things that humans are actually not very good at. Very boring for a human to do, and they will do exceptionally well. But then they will leave a lot of the top-notch, like some of the best coaches really float to the top. And especially a lot of them I'm working with, they're amazing healers and coaches, but they're not good at being on top of the mountain shouting their services. And so I'm excited to create a platform where they can actually be seen. We will have partnership with companies, with philanthropists donating scholarships, with companies and changing school systems, changing education systems, where a lot of those can truly, a lot of the emotional transformations work, and the most effective ones can be democratized and widely accessible. So I'm with you. I love what you're doing with the university as well. It's like, okay, let's leave some of the stuff that AI is getting better at than the average coach to the AI, because that's where the industry is going. Let's not fight that, but how can we create things that are so powerful that only humans can do, only people who bleed can do exceptionally well, make that available to the world to benefit from.
Cool. All right, so we're over the time, and I don't really care. I want to make sure that each of you, what's on your heart that we didn't talk about that we ought to? So what's on your mind? Is there something you didn't say that you're like, I really need to say this?
I just want to say, Yi, I love what you said. I love the platform, that the sound of it that you're creating. Kellan, I love what you're doing. I think that I don't think there's that much different in terms of the direction that we're all thinking in. It might seem like that on some things, but I think ultimately there's a lot of people I'm noticing, and maybe again it's just who I'm surrounding myself with, who are very excited and are using this new change, this period of change, to create something that we weren't able to create before or couldn't. And it's going to be exciting to see how it plays out. There'll be some great stuff out of it. There'll be some stuff that's not so great. But I think you're right, E. There's so many people that I know and coaches and mentors that I've had that no one knew about, right? That weren't well known. There are so many coaches I come across who do exceptional work, who have struggled, and this may be an opportunity for them to really rise up. We I don't have anything burning to say, but one thing just occurred to me, Kellan, is that one of the things that my coaching's developed in over the last 3 or 4 years is really the work of being, or some people call it ontological coaching. And for me, I think again that's a real piece that the AI can't do, because it's actually the journey of the coach stepping into and learning. It's not about perfection, but being what we teach, being what we coach, walking the talk. I remember my time with Steve Hardison, and it was like I got so much out of what he said, but then I learned so much just from who he was. And I'm finding the same thing, that you know in the spiritual circles, for years they've called it transmission, and I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it's like when a person says a certain thing, it can land. And we've all had experience of that. The right person says the right thing at the right time, it lands. You might have read it 1,000 times or heard it from other people. And I think the secret source of that is who each of us are being. So and I really think about this for me in terms of, maybe this is what you mean by staying on the mountain. It's like, if I'm going to coach someone on their marriage, and my marriage is not very good, it doesn't matter if I've got all the right things to say and great like, that doesn't work. And it's the same thing in every area of my life. And it's also, and here's the rub, it's not about perfection, right?
It's about growth opportunity. So you're saying, that's why one of the schools in the university is the School of Transformational Authorship and Creation. And here's what I say, look, the only thing that we have to offer, the most powerful gift and power that we have, is the story of our own becoming, because that's all we own. Everything else is that thing over there. I don't care what you learned how to do or learned how to talk about. The only thing that matters, that carries the power that you're talking about when you speak, is your lived experience, the story of your own becoming. And that's all that there is in this thing. And those that learn and the thought is, and the basis of that model that I proposed in the book is, you have to be the full-on embodiment of what you teach. Not perfect, but in that process, because that's when that transmission, and that word occurs a lot in the book, it leaks out of your eyes and ears and pores and mouth, because it's the energy of your being. And, there's all kinds of principles and stuff to talk about. So yes, 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 and yes. And that embodiment it could be better words, but that's the words where it is the essence of who you are. And I agree with you. It's not hard when you choose that's who you're going to live as. It's just what you've decided to do. E, do you have anything that you want to close us up with?
Yeah, I'm with you on being present with each other as humans, and our stories of becoming. Kellan, what's on my heart is like on this day of your birthday, I remember the first time we met when we both shared our stories of becoming. I remember having tears, like we both have tears in our eyes sharing that, and that a fellow human who went through what we each went through to get here and to be devoted to the service of humanity. And that's a fellow human who bleed, go through the hardship of being a human, and that we can relate with each other. And to me, that's the human spirit. That's what we're here for. We are coming here with flesh, with meat bag, like in spirit, and to be of service and go through the hardship, and like of loss, of gain, of love. That is so precious that AI can talk all the pretty talk, but at the end of the day, they don't bleed. And then we can't, it's different than sitting across from a immortal, no bleeding, no heart being, even if it's intelligent, versus Kellan, when we have our conversation, that's irreplaceable by AI. I will always remember it. It comes to my mind often. And I'm just feeling deep gratitude and love for the way you've been living your life and how you show up. And that's continue to inspire me and touch me and continue to remind me why we're here, even with AI taking over and making a lot of changes rapidly. At the end of the day, that's that heart, that being is what really matters. And I'm just feeling deep gratitude and love towards you for being a human that's really walking the talk.
Well, thank you. I want to thank both of you for being here. Ankush, thank you for sharing your love, your heart, your time, your experience, your insight, and your encouragement today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kellan. And I just want to say, really, that was beautiful. Yi, who has someone acknowledge them like that on a podcast? I've never heard it. That's the first time. So that says a lot about you, Kellan, that you have people coming onto your show and speaking about you in that way is remarkable. And it says a lot about you as well. And I think that's such a beautiful way to end the show, because it really points to this higher space that maybe that's where I really see the profession going, in that real heart space, which is beyond the techniques and models and everything. So thank you so much for having me on here. It's been so wonderful.
E, thank you for being here and sharing your heart and your love and your insights and your encouragement and the generous energy that you have around you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be with you, Ankush, and Kellan. Thank you for your being, and happy solar return.
Yeah, thank you. So, listeners, this has been a really good episode, and I want you to go through. This is for coaches, and I think, like I said before, this isn't really marketing, but I think you need to read that book, and at the same time, you need to examine your own heart. Like, Chris was talking about people that are dedicated to that growth. That's all there is left. If you're not dedicated to the growth, you're done. And that's the thing that's going to be left and what's required. And I say it boldly and clearly, and you can piss you off or whatever, but that's the point, is it's a choice you get to make about who you're going to be and how you're choosing to show up, representing that sacred opportunity to be a light, encouragement, and love for those who turn to you for space and encouragement and healing. So this is the end of the show, and I want to encourage you to listen twice. Look both these guys up. They're cool and they do good stuff. And if you listen, you pay attention, you'll be able to move forward to create your ultimate
sky. Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around
right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe, share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on the ground.